Were told when Boris Johnson won the landslide victory that he won on December the 12th of last year, an 80-seat majority in the House of Commons, that reform was not going to end simply with leaving the European Union. Reform was required in all departments of Whitehall. Reform was required in the way that government does business with other governments as well. And in fact, so much so that Dominic Cummings has been drawing up various lines of attack that various ministers can take into their briefs every single day that they go into their various departments, and to try and make things happen, which have been stopped for a very long time. Last Saturday morning, when I watched Sir Philip Rutnam standing very, very self-satisfied and very pompously outside, as I say, what looked like a sort of public toilet in one of the home counties, I thought to myself, this guy does not know he's born. This guy has never worked anywhere where there has been any kind of criticism of anyone at all. He's also been a character who has got a pretty poor record, quite frankly, of everything that he's ever run, not only at the Home Office, but also at the Department of Trade. Let's talk to Stewart Jackson, former MP, of course, a special advisor to David Davis as well, knows a thing or two about the civil service. Stewart, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you made of the old resignation speech from Sir Philip, but I could barely contain my laughter as I watched him trying to make himself out to be a victim in all of this.
Well, what made me laugh is the sort of flunky standing to the side with the umbrella.
Yeah.
Which was a little bit incongruous. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Rutnam is not used to people, that ilk of the establishment are not used to people standing up to them and actually doing something radical, asking them to carry out manifesto commitments. And I think when you've got that very liberal left, slightly woke mindset, you have a person like Priti Patel, who's a lifelong Eurosceptic, who's tough, who's confident, who's right of centre, who expects results. You know, they don't like it up them. And frankly, Rutnam has no sympathy. He was a disaster at the Department of Transport. I was just thinking back to when I was on the Public Accounts Committee about 6-7 years ago, when the West Coast mainline procurement contract was under scrutiny. And it was a shambolic disaster. And Rutnam should, if he'd had any decency, have resigned in lieu of his officials at the Department of Transport. He, in fact, tried to flannel his way out of it and obviously subsequently moved to the Home Office. He's a sort of Bermuda Triangle of mandarins. Everything he's touched over the last 20 years has been a complete unadulterated disaster.
And yet he's making 175 grand a year. He's probably got a massive pension coming his way, and he's got a knighthood.
Well, yeah, the weird thing is also these crazy lefties have weighed in on behalf of someone who's public school, Oxbridge, establishment, the right clubs, against, apparently being bullied by a 5'6" Ugandan Asian woman who has made something of herself, who is strong. And what the woke left hates is that she's not simpering, she's not playing the race card, she's not playing the feminist card. She's got the support of the vast bulk of the Conservative Party.
And she's also a very successful woman who, as somebody pointed out at the weekend in a piece I read, got to where she is without the help of the woke left, calling for, all sorts of women-only shortlists and like helping hands for females rather than men because they need to be treated differently.
Yeah, and also she was a Spartan. She was one of those Eurosceptic Tory MPs a year or so ago that were threatened by the whip, threatened by Theresa May's ministers that they were finished, that if they didn't vote for this rubbish deal, that was the end of the line. And she had the principle and integrity to stand out and vote against it. And she's been rewarded that by the Prime Minister. And my view is if the liberal left and the establishment think that they're going to get rid of Priti Patel over this, they're wrong. They picked the wrong battleground because, frankly, the government cannot afford to lose this battle. This is a cultural battle to reform and re-energise British government post-Brexit. And she's taking one for the team, frankly. And I think on that basis, most Conservative MPs, ministers and Downing Street certainly have to back her.
Right. I mean, interesting reading some of the analysis this morning, a piece in the Mail by Jason Groves, their political editor, talking about how some people are surprised at Downing Street's attitude, saying that they have, in fact, quietly removed two of her closest aides in recent months, and there are some tensions within the cabinet between people who don't like her and those who do.
Yeah, well, you'll always have people around the cabinet table that are quietly taking pleasure in someone else's misfortune because they want to go up the greasy pole a bit quicker.
Yeah.
That is the nature of very high level politics. It was ever thus. But frankly, the bulk of the Conservative Party in the country, I think the bulk of voters who are very supportive of her points-based immigration system, they support her. And I suspect one of the other key issues is she's asking difficult questions about grooming gangs, in the north of England, and why the internal report by the Home Office, has not been published and seen the light of day and been scrutinised. And I think these people don't like it. Remember, they threw Amber Rudd overboard by feeding her incorrect information because she was asking difficult questions. These are very, very devious and difficult people to deal with, and I think they've met their match in Priti Patel.
Yeah, you would seem so. And some of the vitriol that's been sent her way by the likes of AC Grayling, a bloke who seems to have completely lost his mind over Brexit, calling her a succubus, effectively, which is a female devil who has sex with sleeping men. I mean, can you imagine if you had called Diane Abbott something like that?
Well, don't we use the scale that going the full AC Grayling? I mean, he's completely bonkers, and to have a mind like that was so erudite and so well informed, to have gone completely potty over Brexit is just a tragedy. I mean, we always knew that people like John McDonnell and Alistair Campbell were ruthless thugs, but someone like AC Grayling, who had a degree of respect in the academic community, to be resorting to such vituperative comments, I think it's very sad and actually completely undermines his argument.
And you've worked closely, I assume, with members of the civil service in all different departments and in different aspects of your political career, Stewart. I mean, has it always been this woke? Because it seems to me that it's happened over the last 20 years, because we were talking about this last week when Yes Minister was thought to be kind of quite a funny little parody of what went on. But there was a sort of rule of thumb that the civil service were the stable people, and it was the politicians who were kind of barking, and so they had to be kept in their place. But it seems as though now the shoe's on the other foot.
Well, you touch on a very important point, Mike, and that it's this, that when Blair got into power, almost the first thing he began to do is put like-minded Blairite placemen into position, liberal left people in academia, in public appointments, in government, in the civil service, in the Mandarin classes. The Tory party's never really done that. They've always taken the view, well, let the best person take the job if they're slightly left of centre. And it's been an incredibly naive viewpoint, because what's happened is these people have been in place. They've been basically giving jobs to their friends and supporters and like-minded folk for 20 years. And they will do everything they can to undermine Brexit, which they hate, to undermine a tough policy, for instance, on immigration. And it's time, frankly, for Number 10 to wise up, to start putting Conservative supporting people in positions of influence, because otherwise their reforms will just run into the sand. So I think you're right, there is a ruthlessness on the left to get their people in position, and that includes basically third-rate permanent secretaries in government departments.
And so what do you make of this campaign then that Sir Philip is claiming he's going to sort of launch? So he's going to try and get some kind of unfair dismissal claim underway, which might be more difficult than he thinks. He suggests in his kind of rather, shall we say, thinly veiled attack on Priti Patel and what he knows, and when he's going to tell everybody what it is that he knows, that there's a lot of other people who agree with him.
Well, the weird thing is, if you remember, Mike, 10 days ago, he issued a joint press statement with Priti Patel saying, nothing to see here, move on, we're all getting on fine, it's all tickety-boo.
Right.
I think the issue is that he understood what a weak position he was in, and he's on very thin ice. He wanted to, quote, give her the olive branch, unquote. And she said, no, you're not up to scratch, you've got to go. And he's then thrown his toys out of the pram and kicked off over it.
Right.
I think it's a very old adage that once you turn to the lawyers and get involved in legal cases, that is a very bad situation to be in. And some of the skeletons will come rattling out of the closet for Sir Philip Rutnam, how useless he is, how incompetent he is, and what a bad job he's done in his civil service history. So if I was him, I'd forget about this. I'd go quietly. I'd take the payoff from the Cabinet Office and put it down as a bad experience.
Yes, I think he's just shown his arrogance by saying what he said, because let's not forget, this is the same guy who was running the Home Office when Amber Rudd had to resign in her position because of all the stuff that she got wrong, because of the bad advice that she got from him.
Well, he bailed out. I mean, she actually took the unprecedented step she's not in Parliament now, but when she was a Member of Parliament after leaving as Home Secretary, actually launching a formal complaint against Rutnam because he went AWOL during that whole process. Instead of being either behind the Home Secretary or behind his officials in supporting their point of view, he was nowhere to be seen. And I think, what you need in these positions is strong leadership and a robust approach. And I think Amber Rudd is quite right to have taken issue over that with Rutnam. And that will come out in any future employment tribunal or legal proceedings that are pursued.
Right. And as much as the Labour Party makes a song and dance about having some kind of inquiry, that's obviously not going to go anywhere. But there are some other senior civil servants who are asking for one as well. And it may well be that we see Priti Patel answering questions in Parliament. What do you reckon is going to happen there?
I think it will be a very partisan situation. I think Labour are incredibly weak. I mean, they're a waste of space, frankly, at the moment. Keir Starmer's, I've seen cardboard cutouts with more charisma. The idea that he's the answer, it means it's a very stupid question.
That's true.
If he's the best the Labour Party can do, this metropolitan North London liberal faux working class crazy Remainer becomes leader of the Labour Party, you've got Banquo's ghosts, McDonnell and Corbyn hanging on like a bag of smell. No one wants them hanging around. The Labour Party's dysfunctional at the moment, but they will try and make something of it. But I suspect that the whip will be out in force, encouraging Tory MPs to back Priti Patel, not just for her career, but actually for the whole of the government's strategic approach in reforming government, delivering the manifesto, and having a brighter post-Brexit future. This isn't just about Rutnam and Patel. This is a much bigger seismic epoch-making issue about who governs Britain. Is it the establishment and the mandarins, or is it the British people and their elected representatives?
Yes, and I think there's only one winner there, and it's going to be Boris Johnson. Just off to the side on Labour, I think Richard Bergen wins sort of Labour plank of the weekend, doesn't he, for wanting to twin some towns with the Kashmir and Palestine.
Well, if you sign up to his campaign, you get a little badge, apparently.
Apparently you have to be a Labour member, though, because he's tweeted out, for the avoidance of doubt, these badges are only for Labour members. I think he's worried that it might become a kind of cult thing, that people who don't like him wear them.
Well, he's sort of the unthinking man's Barry Gardner, isn't he, Richard Bergen?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just the gift.
He's great value.
He's a gift that keeps on giving. The idea that he got a degree from Cambridge University is actually quite scary, but he did. Maybe
it was in digging up the lawn or something.
It shows that he is actually that people think he's a credible candidate to be deputy leader of the Labour Party. That's how low they've sunk, frankly.
Yeah.
But anyway, Richard Bergen, bless him.
Also, what do you make of these bozos who have said that basically Boris Johnson is such an uncanny master of PR that he manages to time the impregnation of Carrie Symonds to the exact moment so that he can announce it and bury bad news in the Sunday papers?
Well, you should never underestimate how paranoid and crazy the tinfoil hat nutters on the left are, really. No. Although I have to say, the funny thing that made me laugh today is the man from the Naturist Association saying that being rude to people getting their bits out and being naked in public should be a hate crime. I mean, I thought I'd heard everything, but
I know. I said to Julia, that is one of the
crazy.
greatest interviews ever conducted on radio. Listen, Stewart, thanks very much indeed. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. It's been an amazing few days, actually, triggering all the lefties with all various manner of stories that have been coming out. They literally can't handle it. They can't handle the fact that Boris Johnson's going to get married for the third time. There's going to be somebody in Parliament. There's going to be somebody running the country who's been married 3 times. Absolutely disgraceful. What about Jeremy Corbyn? He's been married a few times, hasn't he? What about all the other people that have done things? I mean, I find it absolutely staggering that these lefties get so worked up about something. And also, what on earth are they doing defending a white, middle-aged, middle-class, £175,000 a year civil service mandarin against a woman of colour? I think the world's been turned on its head, hasn't it? Exciting times. Let's talk to Daniel, who's in Epsom. Hi, Daniel.
Good morning, Chief. How you doing?
Very well indeed. I must admit, it's one of the greatest weekends of all time in terms of laughing at the lefties.
Yeah, I'll tell you what Brexit did, right? It shone a light on the judiciary and the civil service. And what it showed us was that virtually all of them are upper middle class, lefties, weaklings, and they'll do anything to stifle and anything to resist. And the problem they've got now is that we now know it. Before we didn't really know it,
yes.
Now we do.
But isn't it interesting what Stewart Jackson said, that they were all kind of placed in there by the Blair government?
Oh, yeah, Blair created the judiciary. He basically manipulated the civil service, and that now has to be undone. And Brexit's done us the world of good because it showed us this. And otherwise we might not have known. It might not have been so obvious. And now people like Priti Patel are going in there demanding change, and they're resisting. And if you resist, you're going to have to go.
Yeah.
And things are going to have to change.
Absolutely right. Because it's one thing for the civil service to act as a kind of, just a questioning, perhaps, department, people who might be expert in something. But this is a bloke who has literally screwed everything up that he's ever touched. Everything he's gone anywhere near has been a disaster.
Oh, yeah, he's got the reverse Midas touch.
Yeah, totally.
I've got civil servants in my family, actually. And,
yeah.
And as much as I love them, I have to admit they are exactly that. They're kind of New London type, very woke. You know, they are of the left, very much so.
Yeah.
And I think now what we'll see across government as a whole, across the civil service and across the judiciary, is major change. And I'm in a way, their resistance. When you look at the left as a whole, their resistance for the 2 or 3 years that we saw. When you look at what they actually achieved a more pro Brexit government, a harder government. They achieved. Us realising that the civil service and the judiciary were basically needed changing. They absolutely achieved none of their aims whatsoever. All of the pro-EU MPs ended up going. Their resistance actually led to their downfall.
Yeah, I love it. It's like lifting up a stone in a garden, isn't it? And you watch all the worms kind of scrabbling about and the ants running for cover because they don't like the light to be shone on them. It's a great analogy, that, Daniel. Thank you very much indeed. Great way to kick off the show. This is the problem in this country, right? We've been walking through in a kind of dream state, thinking that the people that run the country actually have our best interests at heart. They don't. They've got their own best interests at heart. They're all busy getting themselves knighthoods. They're all busy getting themselves foreign holidays and geets and villas in Tuscany. They're all busying themselves making sure that if anything goes horribly wrong in this country, they can all get a job in the European Union. I think Daniel's absolutely spot on there. He has pointed out that the light has now been shone on the judiciary. I mean, look at all these ridiculous, asinine barristers all over Twitter telling everybody what's right and what's wrong. There was one guy on there at the weekend making fun of David Beckham for being thick. I mean, these people are an absolute scourge on humanity. They are a disgrace to civilised behaviour. They think they're better than everybody else. Well, let me tell you something. You're not. Let's talk to Vernon in Worcester. He wants to talk about Priti Patel. Hi, Vernon.
Hi. The bleating from the Remainers continues. To just set the scene.
Yes.
Boris has told Priti Patel, this is the job that you need to implement. And the Home Office, for a very long time, have been doing things their own way. And let's be fair, with the issues of Windrush and various other things, they're hardly a blemish-free organisation.
Absolutely hopeless. I mean, it's worse than that. And particularly this guy, Sir Philip, whatever his name is, has been useless.
Yeah. How do you become a sir when you work for the Home Office? I thought you had to be like Roger Federer or, somebody really major rather than just doing an admin job in the Home Office.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think he's one of their top guys. He's been running, fast and loose in the civil service for more than 30 years, as he said, 33 years, 175 grand a year, more money than the Prime Minister gets. I mean, there's hordes of these people.
Mike, it's staggering, but this is just the start. This is just the start. They lost, effectively their fight to remain in the EU, and now this will just be the beginning. The scaremongering over the trade deals. Business always finds a way to do business.
Of course.
Throughout the world.
Well, look at how everybody who was
find a way.
who was expecting, the EU trade business to fall apart. It's currently under discussion. Nobody's talking about the EU anymore because the coronavirus is a far more kind of, shall we say, present danger.
The coronavirus is a huge threat to the world supply of everything.
Yes, I agree with that.
Obviously, lots of things come across the world, and ultimately, if car manufacturers can't get parts, because, I buy from China, Chinese New Year, the factories I deal with, they've had an extra 4 weeks off work.
Yeah.
And let's be really clear about this, Mike, without any scaremongering at all. If China tells you 200,000 people have been affected, that if you multiply it probably 10 times, you would be closer to the actual truth. China is the most secretive nation in the world, and we have no idea of the extent of this problem. And that causes us far more problems than doing a trade deal with the EU. And let's be fair about
That's true. But I think my understanding, Vernon, from talking to people over the weekend, is that trade in China is recovering. Whatever it is that they have done in the past, you're absolutely right, we may never know what that was, but it seems as though they've got on top of it, and the problem is exacerbating there and is disappearing as fast as it came.
The factories that I'm trading with, Mike, they're back to work this week. They've had an extra 4 weeks off, and, courteously, they said, thanks for thinking of us, Vernon. We are back to work. Everything is fine. We're not in this province. It's going to be business as normal.
Right.
Well, you and I know that's probably not going to be the case. But my point for the call, Mike, is Priti Patel. I like her immensely. I'm one of those men of colours, supposedly a racist, and here I am backing, Priti Patel, doing a fine job. She's very direct. She's got a lot to do. We've got a new immigration policy to implement. We are leaving the EU. There's new security measures to put in place, security agreements to come to. And unfortunately, the Home Office people are going to have to move.
Yeah.
They're going to have to... The tree has been shaken, and they're going to have to react. And Sir Philip, bless him, he'll retire with a nice pension. And I'm sorry that he shouted at, but sometimes bosses have to shout at
Well,
them.
it's interesting. He didn't say she shouted at him. She said she shouted at other people. But Vernon, thanks. Great call. Let's go to Alan, who's in Derbyshire. Hello, Alan.
Oh, hi, Mike.
How are you?
I'm feeling a bit rough this morning.
Oh, are you?
I'm not as erudite as usual.
Okay.
I'm just thinking, as far as civil servants go, the only one I know is Clive Ponting.
Yes.
And I really think that we ought to be bringing the fight to them. And if this bloke wants to bring the government or its ministers into disrepute, shouldn't we be able to take his knighthood off him?
I think you're absolutely right. I'd like to know precisely why he's got a knighthood in the first place, because he made this comment about service to the country and all this, And, it's all a bit sort of pompous for me. It's service to the country, 175 grand a year. It's not like sitting in a bivouac somewhere in the middle of Afghanistan waiting for the next Exocet missile to hit you, is it?
No. I think it's terrible. I think it's another one. He's another sort of Dominic Grieve and John Burke.
Yeah.
Who are they? Who were they?
Right.
That's it. They've got nothing to do with us.
No. I think you're absolutely right. Well, listen, I hope you feel better, Alan, and I hope you get yourself checked out if there's anything seriously wrong with you.
Yeah, no, it was funny because as I was listening to you, I got this dry cough, but then I've just remembered that I've had some peppery crisps. So I think that's probably what the score
Well,
is.
that's all right then. Well, don't self-isolate for too long in that case. You'll probably be fine in a couple of hours. Thanks very much indeed, Alan, there in Derbyshire. I think the bottom line on this whole story with Sir Philip Rutnam is that basically here's a guy who has finally been found out. As people have said, the tree has been shaken, the cage has been rattled. This bloke probably could see the writing on the wall. He could see that this was not someone that he could run rings round, that Priti Patel was not like former Home Secretaries that he could basically just kind of bamboozle with detail, rather like they used to do in Yes Minister. This is a guy who absolutely knows the writing is on the wall, knows that finally he's gone one life too many. He's survived many, many situations that he should not have survived. how on earth these people do get these kinds of payoffs, how they get these kinds of rewards, how they become knights of the realm. It really is quite a secretive business. And you talk about China being a secret society, but there are lots of things that have been going on in this country for decades that we need to shine a light on. As I said in the first hour, it feels a little bit like lifting a rock in the garden and finding all sorts of things sort of slithering around underneath it. Let's talk to James, who's in Telford. Hello, James.
Good morning, Chief.
Morning, sir. What can I do for you?
I'm going to have 3 quick points.
Go on.
I'm a salesman, and to me, there's always the one thing that clinches the deal. So, with regards to Priti Patel,
Yeah.
she was quoted before the election as saying, if you think I'm tough on crime, you should speak to the general public.
Yes.
And when I heard her say that, I thought, you know what? You are the most credible politician currently serving in the Houses of Parliament today. She is definitely my Home Secretary.
She certainly is, and she's doing what it is that people voted the government in to do, which is to crack down on criminals, to keep those people inside jails longer, to keep terrorists inside jails longer, and to make sure that the public feels safer out on the street. Let's talk to Barry, who's calling in from Paisley. He wants to talk about Priti Patel. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Mike. How's it going?
Very well, sir. What can I do for you?
Well, what it is I've been listening to, various news outlets over the last couple of days with regards to this story. And I don't really hear anybody discussing the recent grooming gang report that seems to have been withheld from getting published.
Yes. Well, funnily enough, Stewart Jackson mentioned that this morning, that, it's entirely within the remit of the Home Office, that report. And what we don't yet know is whether that's one of the reasons why these two have fallen out.
Well, we don't quite know that, but I think we could perhaps surmise that that's certainly got something to do with it.
It may have, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think with Priti Patel trying to implement, a new migration policy, and then also Priti Patel trying to open up the details of the grooming gang report, it just seems to me as if Sir Philip has pushed back on both of these things,
right?
And that's what's caused this friction.
Yes. I mean, certainly that plus maybe a few other things as well, because clearly this is not a bloke who likes to be told what to do and how to do it. And she obviously is a woman who likes to run a department in the way she wants to run it.
This is a guy that thinks he's bigger than Priti Patel.
Yeah.
And this is a guy that obviously thinks that he can somehow manoeuvre his way out of... the British people voted in a Conservative government with a large majority.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson put Priti Patel in a position to do a job. And who does he think he is to try and stop her from doing that job that the Prime Minister asked her to do, that we put him in office to do?
I know. I think also it's like one of our earlier callers, Daniel, said, I think we didn't know quite that the civil service was as politicised as it has now become, because we never really heard much about it.
Well, we didn't know all of this until the whole Brexit thing started, and then it became very clear that the whole civil service is very left-wing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say they're very liberal. I'd say they're very, very left-wing. But just whilst I've got you, do you think this report will come out?
Well, I think the government have said... I mean, Priti Patel hasn't said that this report is by any means the reason why they've had the row, and it's the government themselves who have said that they don't want the report to come out yet. I hope it does come out, because it should come out, but I think the reason they're a bit concerned about the timing of it is maybe there's a couple of court cases going on. I just don't really know. But certainly they don't want it taken out of context in some way. But for me, you don't get open and transparent government by not releasing documents.
Well, this is true. And, 9 out of 10 people that I hear call in seem to be of the same opinion as myself.
Right.
They're of the same opinion as Sir Philip and what he's trying to do. And I think that...
What do you mean 9 out of 10 people that you hear calling in where?
Well, everybody that's phoning into the radio stations this morning seems to be on Priti Patel's side.
Yes.
And that's the vast majority of the British people, I would say. So what's going to happen about this? What will the end result be, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think he will not get his unfair dismissal claim. I don't agree that we can't talk about it because it might end up in court, because it's not a criminal case by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's a pompous prig, and we're well shot of him. And I don't think that anybody will lament his passing, to be honest. What happens to the Grooming report, I'm sure we will see some light there, because I think people like me and others will keep putting pressure on the Home Office and saying, look, can we please have a look at this? We need to see it, because the people demand it.
What do you think? What would be the reason behind them not wanting to release that report.
Well, as you know, there's a lot of sensitivities around the whole issue of grooming gangs, and I don't understand why there is, but there always has been. And I think the problem now is trying to break down that sensitivity, as it's called. And I think the problem is that the government might be worried that there are people who will use the report and what's in the report to take some kind of action against people, and maybe that's what they're trying to avoid. I don't know.
Well, look, that's just speculating. But local authorities.
Well, you asked me to speculate, didn't you?
Well, yeah, but I mean that's not you speculating. That's not what I mean. I think that's maybe the government speculating. Yes. But local authorities can't mitigate against risks unless they have the details of this report.
No, that's true. But it may well be the local authorities have seen it. We'll see. But we'll certainly keep on it for you, Barry. And as soon as we know anything, we will let you know, because that's what we do here at Talk Radio. We are all about transparency. We are certainly all about freedom of information. I'm not in favour of keeping things secret. I don't think that's ever the way to go when you're talking about governments, apart from reasons of national security.